And we're singing. We're singing. Dun, 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 dun. Time to talk. Beauty and the Bitch.
Okay, Morgie.
Mm.
I'm not mad.
Oh, okay.
I'm not mad. No, I'm not. I'm not mad.
Okay, you're mad. What's wrong?
Here's the thing. Okay, you know how I told you I'm not going to loan out books anymore?
Yes.
Okay. You may or may not know, but there is a specific reason for why I'm not loaning out books. I've been burned in the past.
Oh, well, as have I.
Okay. I loaned out my beloved copies of Name of the Wind and Wise Man's Fear.
Oh.
The Rothfuss fantasy.
And they're hard to come by at a reasonable price.
Yes, they are, because they're still new enough and popular enough. I loaned them out to someone, and I cannot figure out who, and everyone says they don't have them. Do you have them?
It wasn't me. You did not.
Morgan?
You did not.
Don't you fuck with me.
It wasn't me.
Because I will end our friendship over a fantasy series.
It wasn't me.
After all, it was founded on a fantasy series.
He loaned out his fantasy books. It wasn't me. He wanted them back. It wasn't me. I don't know. But it wasn't me. And it
really
wasn't
wasn't
Shaggy.
you? Okay.
It really wasn't me. Shaggy's the person who sings that song. It wasn't me.
Oh, it wasn't me. And then in the bathroom.
It wasn't me.
I fucked her in the storage closet.
But if she had brought the books back, we would have fucked her
I
in
would
just
have
the
fucked her
bedroom.
left, right up and down. Look, this is a PSA. Welcome to Beauty and the Bitch. I'm Mick.
I'm Morgan.
And if you have my Rothfuss books,
He wants them back.
girl, please bring them back to me. I wasn't able to reread them for this episode, and that's my excuse.
And that is upsetting.
But I genuinely wanted to reread them.
Yeah, they are really good.
Who did I give them to?
I think it was your mom.
Don't you put that on my mother.
I
may have. She
think
does
it was
lose
Fran.
things sometimes.
All I know is it wasn't me, and I'm so sorry. Because actually, I have books floating out there that have not been returned to me.
It wasn't me.
No, it wasn't you.
Oh, okay.
But it's other people.
Okay.
And I hate that moment when a friend is like, hey, can I borrow X, Y, or Z? And you're like mentally doing the Olympics thinking like, can I please them, but also tell them no? And will we still be friends? And what's a bitchy way to say no? But then you just shout no at them and then you're dead to them.
Yeah. And then they never come back and you've lost a friend. But you still have your piece of media, which is important.
Always.
Whether it be an audio book, a pamphilate.
You never know when your friends are trying to take your pamphalates.
Girl, I've got a pamphilate on healthy living.
How are you going to know to not get HIV from Sailor Moon if you don't read the pamphilate?
Oh my God, I never would have known had I not read it. You know what? Our dear friend Sarah has a good bit of wisdom on this.
Oh.
Specifically, this wisdom's about loaning money, but I think, pardon my...
She gives it out thinking it won't come back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So her bit of wisdom is don't ever loan anyone something that you would be hurt if they didn't return. And I think that's really brilliant. Don't loan a book if you're going to be butthurt at your friend because they didn't return it to you.
Yeah.
Don't
I
loan
just
your
like
love.
my books.
I like my books too, which is why I don't loan them no more.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it's no tea, no shade. It's just no, it makes me too neurotic. I worry about it. I will hold it against you if you don't return my book. If I think about it, which I may never think about it, but you know. So yeah, I just don't do it anymore.
Well, I'm so sorry you weren't able to reread The Name of the Wind, which is an excellent Patrick Rothfuss book, the first in a trilogy, which is called The Kingkiller Chronicles, and is the topic of today's show.
Girl, I am so excited for this episode. I fucking love this series.
So I remember the day that I asked you about The Name of the Wind. It was actually last year. I was working at that book website thing I was doing, and I was building a top 5 list of books to read if you love Harry Potter. And all this shit I read on the internet was you should read The Name of the Wind. And weirdly, I was like, I don't think I've heard of that. And we were hanging out or something, and I brought it up, and you were so excited that I had never heard of it, which I think, to me, the greatest gift you can give to someone in streaming, binge watching shows on Netflix or a series to read or just great authors, books, TV, movie is introducing a great thing that like almost you wish you had never read or seen yet so you could start over and do it again. And that's the glimmer you had in your eye.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I did freak out when you asked me about it because, it's such a good, notable, I think for many years will be memorable series, but like you, until I discovered it, I don't know if I even heard murmurs about it.
Which is weird.
It's very strange that it's flown under the radar. It came out in 2007, Name of the Wind did.
Yeah.
So it just had its 10-year anniversary last year.
But, like, we just graduated. We were in, like, a peak of, like, our fantasy consumption in 2007. So, like, how did we miss it?
How did we miss it?
It's so weird.
But it has flown under the radar in a very real way. I think quite similar to, The Wheel of Time did a similar thing. I didn't hear about that until late 90s, early 2000s. I think the first one came out in 87.
Yeah, it's been... Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
I think it's connected to so many fantasy series start every year, and real hardcore fantasy nerds are going to read all the shit, but a lot of it, no tea, no shade.
It's not good.
It's just not memorable. Maybe it's good in the moment.
It's
the way
redundant
Dan Brown is good, but
whatever,
it's just like boilerplate, whatever, fantasy of the moment. And they get into it, and I love them for that. I have no shade about that, but I've never been that person. But I genuinely believe the Kingkiller Chronicles, similar to the plethora of Brandon Sanderson series that are going on right now, I think they will stand the test of time. And I think in 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, maybe not longer, because there's a lot of fantasy, people will be talking about it.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's going to be like a staple going forward. And for me, it's quickly rose the ranks of like if, and people often come to me for recommendations because they know like, fantasy weirdly isn't a genre that a lot of people in my life read extensively. So when people are like, I want to read like a fun, like magic something, like I get a lot of questions about that. And this is now quickly one of the books I recommend first and foremost. I'm like, you should check this out. Because it's got just enough magic and fantasy mixed in with kind of like that Game of Thronesy vibe, sort of like just living your life in like a medieval sort of time, but also extremely progressive and scientific and magical. It's weird. I don't know. It's like hard to describe.
It is, the thing that I think a lot of people, because I feel I'm going to be honest, a lot of people find this to be a very polarizing book. Specifically, they find Quoth, the protagonist. Is that how you say his name, Morgan?
That's how I heard it.
Okay. It looks like Kavothi, but
it's
don't be
not.
embarrassed.
Yeah, the V apparently is a W. And basically any pronunciation in like a fantasy book, whatever you think it is, it's not.
Yeah,
it's something else.
So I spent a good long time saying, oh, Kavothi, but his name is Quoth.
Quoth.
It's like an Eastern European name, isn't it? So it's like the KV becomes like a Quoth.
Yeah. Quoth.
It's supposed to, it like rhymes with quoth.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the point is, a lot of people find this to be a very polarizing series, and they particularly find the protagonist, Quoth, to be quite polarizing and unlikable.
Which is, I mean, it's weird because you see him in so many stages of his life, and like, who isn't unlikable at one stage or another?
Yeah, exactly. You're unlikable right now.
Well, we all have phases.
How do I do it, audience? How do I do it? How do I, Mick Parker, Queen of the World, stand this sludge bucket?
She's beauty and she's grace.
She's beauty and she's bitchy. But the thing is, though, I think what a lot of people don't fully grasp or maybe give credit to about this series, this is an epic, capital E epic fantasy. It pulls from other epic fantasy. It plays with bigger meta ideas like, what if your protagonist is an asshole because he's telling his own story and wants to make himself look good? We'll get back to that.
Yeah.
But like, I don't understand why people don't get that. That is part of the story. That's part of the tension, you know? But whatever. We'll get there.
Okay, so let's just do a brief overview of like what The Name of the Wind is in general. No spoilies, but just like generally this is what it is, what you can expect, and why you, as a person who maybe hasn't read this, should read it. So it is a epic fantasy series. It will be a trilogy. There are 2 books out now, a 3rd book forthcoming. And there are a couple of novellas on the side that I haven't read. Mix read one of them.
A Slow Regard of Silent Things, I think.
Which is a lot of words.
It is quite long. It's about a minor character from books 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm. And we have a hero at the center of our fantasy quoth, as you heard. He is basically paired up with another character, and he is telling the epic story of his life. And what he tells the person he's speaking to, the chronicler, he tells him, I'll tell you my story, but it's going to take 3 days. And that's symbolic of the trilogy. So the first book, The Name of the Wind, The Kingkiller Chronicles Book 1, is also known as The Kingkiller Chronicles Day 1, is like an alternate title for this book. And the second one is Day 2, and the third one is Day 3. And so it's a long fucking story over the course of one day, I might add. It literally takes up every hour of the day.
Yeah, and it's also like isn't it like an 800-page book, and the second one's like 1,000+ pages?
It's well over 1,000 pages. So I did audiobooks, which is why I conveniently know how to pronounce quoth, just because I heard it over and over. And the first one was like 40 hours long. And I was like, damn, that's long. The second one was like 60 hours long. So they're very long. Yeah. Long. Which is great if you're that kind of fantasy reader who just wants more, because you will be done wanting more even after 1,000+ pages, because there's so much. So Quoth is telling his story. And so he gives you background on like where he came from. The world they live in is called Tamarant, and it's kind of made up of these sort of different kingdom types. It's kind of unclear to me the ruling system between these different regions or the individual kingdoms, because it kind of seems like they are. It's like these kind of people. He visits different regions, and it's kind of like it's whatever we were just talking about like different groups of people, and I can't remember what they're called.
Well, they're like, he calls it, Rothfuss calls it the 4 corners of civilization, which looks kind of like, if you're looking at a map of it, it's like a bizarro version of Europe, really. I mean, it's not quite the same, but there are some definite similarities. And
they're very distinct.
They're all very different, these countries within. You've got like the Aturan Empire, you've got Modeg, you've got the small kingdoms, Vintas, Adimre, yeah. Adimre, which is all up in the north. Most of it, in book 1 at least, happens in the Commonwealth, which is where Quoth spends most of his childhood. He goes to university and things happen.
And there is this university, but apparently there's only like one. It's like the university.
Yeah, she's Yale University right there.
And it's like, because this is a fantasy world, there is this element of like magic and manipulation and like utilizing elements and stuff, hence the Name of the Wind. So they call it like the Arcanum, and there's like all this, there's a lot that goes into the magic of the world.
Yes, but we'll return to.
Yeah. But basically the gist is like, you can be prone to magic. You can have some skills or not even magic, just different variations of like special gifts. But if you want to be proficient and trained in these ways, you need to get into the university. You need to be a part of the Arcanum. And that is difficult and expensive to do. And they charge different students different varying tuitions. So one of my favorite things is like seeing the creativity with like being able to afford college, because I'm like, for me, I was just like, I can't afford college. I'll just take student loans, please. But apparently in Tamarant, there are no such things as student loans. There are loan sharks.
Yes, there sure are. And there are ways to finagle your way through.
Yeah.
Many of which Quoth utilizes.
Yes, he's very gifted. So
he's good at it. Just for the record, this episode is all about Name of the Wind. That's probably what we're going to title it. If you're at the end of this episode hungry for more, don't you worry, sweet baby. Because we're going to do Wise Man's Fear.
Book 2, day 2.
Yes. So some things we're going to be getting more into next week. For example, There are a lot of new media projects coming out based on this book series. A movie, TV show, a video game.
There's so much in the works.
There's a lot. We're going to be covering the bulk of that next week.
Yeah.
Just for the record.
Today we're just like laying the bones on the Patrick Rothfuss universe and kind of our feelings and things we like, things we have questions on, things we don't like, and just kind of giving you some background on the story. So that's kind of like Quoth. Without giving too much away, you're basically just following his journey. So if you're interested in that, it's very exciting. You learn at the beginning of the book, I don't know if you remember, you basically start out learning about the fairy tale of Taborlin the Great, who was like this great, he was like the great wizard of all time. And
he's
so
like the Mick Parker of this world. Okay.
So there's so there's like a lot of fairy tales centered on and around Taborlin the Great, right? And and we kind of basically wonder and learn throughout the series, like, what truth is there to that? Because Taborlin the Great's greatest achievement was that he knew the name of the wind and he called it and he saved himself. And it was kind of like knowing the name of the winds means like he was like familiar with the winds. It was almost like a cat is like a witch is familiar. The wind like belonged to him in a way. He knew a piece of it. He asked it to do something and it answered his call. And so that's kind of like where the name of the book comes from. And it's also like this kind of idea. It's like this attainable thing that seems very unattainable. Like everyone can't do this. This is an insane thing to be able to do.
And immediately with the intro of this book, you get one of the main themes of the book, which is a person's story, whether told by other people or told by themselves, is not necessarily how that story happened. And I think that's one of the smartest things about this series is that that frame that you were talking about. We meet this man. He is in a certain place. He doesn't seem like a storybook hero. But over the course of 3 days, he tells you his storybook story. And you have to ask yourself at every step of the way, how do I reconcile this hero that I'm hearing about with this relatively nondescript man I see in front of me? What changed him? What went wrong? What mistakes did he make? You know, and everyone does that with their own story. That's something I just think is so smart. And I think people don't give it enough credit. Is like, you listen to an 80-year-old man talk about his life story, or woman, or person of any gender. They tell you stories and you're like, wow, World War II, tell me that story. Or the time that like you saved your wife from a bandit or whatever. Like what they're not telling you is the years of drudgery in between, or that time they got drunk and hit their wife, or that time that they hit a dog and kept going. You know, they leave out all those gross, mundane
usually
things.
Get the highlights.
Because and people tell their own fables.
And revamped versions of the highlights also.
Yes.
Yeah.
We build our legends.
The
build our legends. We tell about ourselves, you know?
And then, like, it's great to hear Quoth, who's living his new life in a new way, and Chronicler is this person he's recounting his stories to, and then Chronicler has to reconcile what Quoth tells him against the legends that he already knows, because he is a legendary figure. Famous, and like he has to kind of almost not be like, oh, but then didn't you do this thing? And he kind of has to like let it like the story bloom on its own without kind of like guiding it. But also like that's kind of a hard place to be as a listener. Like you want to know about the things you have specific questions about.
What happened? What actually happened, sir?
And sometimes, like you said, we build our own legend. Sometimes
that fish was this big, right?
And he gets to a part of the story where he says, you know what? That's not for you. That's a personal thing that I won't be letting you know. And that's frustrating as a reader, and also as like a person who's trying to accurately record that information.
Anytime I see an actress interview who's been married to a sexy celebrity, I'm like, tell me about his dick.
Yeah.
Why are you talking about anything else? Tell me about
No one cares about your bangs.
No.
Except for me, too.
Your charity work? Fuck it. Tell me about, what's his name? Chris, who's Star-Lord? No, Star-Lord from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Pratt.
Chris, tell me about Chris Pratt's balls. That's what I want to know.
You know, the funny thing is in her podcast, she for sure used to always talk about their sex life before they got divorced.
Does it sound
But
good?
she didn't, like, describe his balls specifically.
Okay. I want, like, a graphite drawing.
You know, you wouldn't like this at all. She made a lot of jokes about, like, trying to find ways to, like, pretend to give him blowjobs so that, like, she just didn't have to because she was lazy.
That's why they broke up.
Well,
blow his dick
I mean, she is like a comedian, so it's like, was she just saying that to be funny? But also at the same time, it was like that's just like real life married people stuff where it's like, what can I do to like not have
not
to?
everyone loves to suck a dick.
And maybe she doesn't.
And that's fine. And that's totally, I support her in that. But I am just saying, blowjobs do tend to make the medicine go down. You know what I mean?
That is what Mary Poppins always said.
Yes.
It was like subliminal messaging, like in Lion King and Aladdin. She'd be like, a spoonful of pop helps the medicine go down.
There's be a quick shot of her sucking a dick. That's in the movie. Rewatch.
That's canon. That's canon.
Queen.
We digress.
Well, yeah, that was a digression right there, girl. And I had to look back. I don't even know where we came from.
Okay, we were talking about the relationship with Chronicle.
Chronicler.
The What Cools of Narnia. We're talking about C.S. Lewis.
You're fucked up.
Anyway, we're not. But we will in a future episode, I imagine. Yeah,
I'm sure.
Okay, so storytelling.
Yes.
It changes. And there's something with that for memory as well. There's like something that people always say where it's like statistically, the further you get away from an event, the less accurate your recounting of that is, which is like a huge deal in like criminal cases and police reports and shit like that. Which is why you can't bring a witness in from a thing that happened 20 years ago. That bitch didn't even remember 10 minutes later what had happened. 20 years have gone by.
Tell me where you were, Morgie, on, what's the date today?
September 11th.
No. Well, you can remember that, but that's special. Tell me where you were on July 18th, 1998. That was 20 years ago.
Oh my God. How is that 20 years ago? I was 10.
I know.
And I'm only 21, so the math doesn't matter.
It doesn't. You're some kind of time traveler.
Woo, party girl. I'm so not. I was at my Aunt Nancy's house, convincing her that cheese sniffs was an appropriate dinner that I would be having that evening, and that it was not up for conversation. And then I pooped in her swimming pool.
There's the pearl of truth. I was going to say, so that's the way Morgan tells her legend. In reality, Morgan ate too many cheese nips and pooped in the pool. Yeah. Everyone laughed at her.
It's all coming back.
Yes, and that's why her leg has freckles.
One freckle. One freckle. One freckle.
Freckles.
Freckles. Singular.
White people rapping. Priceless. Okay, so that whole thing is going on with the King Killer Chronicles. Trying to remember, telling it your own way. The sort of the slow, sweet death of our memories as we get older.
Indeed.
What's going on with Patrick Rothfuss as an author?
Girl.
Who is she, though?
So much. Okay, let me just hit you with a couple of quick figs I have, and then we're going to talk about Patty Roth. Okay, so I don't know what you feel about this book, except strongly, and that's great. It has a 4.55 star rating on Goodreads.
Deserved, I think.
Absolutely. It's a great rating for that book. The word count of The Name of the Wind is around 250,000 words. So it's long, but it's not like crazy for like a fantasy book, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Copies sold. I couldn't find how many copies of just this book had sold. I could only find a collective for the series, which is the 2 books and the 2 novellas, have collectively sold over 10 million copies.
Jesus.
Yeah. So that's pretty good. Patrick Rothfuss is worth around $4 million. That's like his net value.
Good for her.
Whatever that means, anyway, net value, but that's him. And The Name of the Wind came out March 27th, 2007. Mm-hmm. So 11 years ago. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Patrick Rothfuss has been doing a number of things. He's had a couple other books he's written, the novellas, some other series he's worked on. Wise Man's Fear came out, of course. But fans have been waiting a long time for the 3rd book. Okay, in this year, 2018, he has traveled more this year than he has in collective years. He's been attending lots of conferences, Comic-Cons. I was going to tell you, I didn't know. He was at PAX South in San Antonio in January. And Aaron went, and I chose not to go because I just didn't think there was anything I wanted to see. And now I feel like an idiot because I could have gone to his panels.
I would love to meet Patty Roth.
So maybe he was like a last minute I don't know. I missed that completely. So that's a bummer.
He may have been a surprise guest. He's the level of surprise, big star.
New information I do know about him. He's been going to all these press tours, and he said, even though he originally promised years ago that The Doors of Stone, which is the working title for book 3, was going to come out in 2015, it never happened. Recently, at one of his public events this year, he has said 2019 is probably the year. Yeah. So we can look forward to a very hard probably. The book has been finished for a while. It's just been in the edit phase, right? They've been doing heavy editing on it because he has said, and I understand. Actually, I read this interview where he said that releasing this book is kind of like having sex in public, where it's like, man, that sounds so sexy and like exactly what I want to do. And I just want to get up in there and I want to get it done and I want everyone to see it. But then when you step back, you're like, but then people are going to see this gross factor and they're going to judge me for this particular thing. And they're going to think that I didn't do this other thing very well. So he wants to step it back and he wants to like, he's so like vulgar, which I super appreciate. He basically was like, I want to fuck good and I want you to appreciate it. Which is like a really eloquent and like on our level way to explain which is like how he wants you to feel about it. Like he wants to fuck you good and for you to like every moment of it.
Look, I think both of us can empathize with the anxiety that an author must feel after they've already put out a series.
Successful series.
Good books. Yes, because this third book, which is the last of the Kingkiller trilogy.
But, yes.
Right.
Yes. But there will be, he has said 100%, there will be more in the realm of Tamarant. Like, Tamarant's not done. Just Quoth's story.
Just Quoth. But he has a lot of loose ends to tie up.
He does.
There's a lot of Quoth's life that we still haven't seen, and a shit ton of mysteries. We'll probably talk about more next episode. That we still don't know. We have no idea what's going to happen in this third book, but a lot needs to happen. A shit ton.
So yeah, there's a lot to wrap up. And I read about the word count is going to end up being somewhere between the first and second book. So it's not going to be as long as A Wise Man's Fear, but it's going to be longer than the first book.
That's surprising to me. I would have thought it'd be the longest.
I know. Normally that's how it goes. But I guess he's been cutting down a ton of stuff to like make it flow better or whatever. So he's like super in there, which I appreciate the editing process and I understand. But also, he's literally been editing it for years. Like, the book has been completed. A completed version of the book existed years ago. Like, maybe even a decade ago. But he also has been getting sidetracked with other projects. So,
okay, George R.R. Martin over here.
Girl! He's had a lot of stuff on his plate. Here's some of this notable thing he's been doing. He created a Kickstarter project to make a deck of cards that was Name of the Wind theme. And I don't understand exactly why, except for fan service. And it's like really beautifully curated cards of like characters and scenes from the book. But I think it's like a card deck, like playing cards. But it's like an art piece. And so he did a Kickstarter for that, which got funded. And I just read his latest blog post. He was saying it's almost ready. Back in April, he did a post and said it's almost ready, and he's so upset because it's going to get shipped out 6 weeks late. And then he made a jab at himself about like his timeliness, and he was like, also, not to be a dick or anything. This is a direct quote. Also, not to be a dick or anything, but y'all know who I am, right? I mean, seriously, 6 weeks late? You should be dancing a fucking jig at the news that something I'm making is only 6 weeks late. So like, he's very like he knows that it's painful to be waiting.
When did Wise Man's Fear come out? Do you have that?
I don't. Okay, so the first one came out in 2007. I want to say it came out in like 2010 or 2011.
It's been like a really long time.
Yeah.
Like it's been a legit very long time.
I think like 2010, maybe.
So yeah, I mean, you know, he's kind of like George R.R. Martin. I know he gets kind of pissed sometimes at fans, and fans also become kind of very hateful. But it's like, look, girl, you left me with blue balls for like a decade. okay? And you're out there living your rich man fantasy while I'm just a fucking nobody trying to read these fantasy books.
Girl,
you know what I mean?
It's like literally all I want.
Yeah, think about the little man.
And, sorry, another thing I read in his blog that briefly infuriated me is that he was talking about how he gets offered so many side projects that he turns on all the time so he can focus on this third book.
Appreciated.
Thank you. That he got offered something he couldn't turn down that he's currently working on, which is a Rick and Morty Dungeons and Dragons comic book crossover that he's like creating, which I guess he's a big D&D person, like that's just like a part of who he is. And I guess he's like a huge Rick and Morty fan, so he was like super honored to be asked to like create this story. But then I was like reading, that kind of intrigued me. And so then I was reading about his D&D connections, and I read that, so the way the story is told, like basically Quoth telling a story to the chronicler is like a D&D arc. Like the storyteller is like a huge like D&D plot arc across like games you can play. So there's a lot of crossover from like D&D type stuff and the characters and relationships that get built in The Name of the Wind. And because I'm not a big D&D person, like I never saw that. So I think that's really interesting because it's almost like it's a game, because it is this vast world that a number of stories are happening within consecutively across time, but we have just honed in on this one essential campaign. Like we are just storytelling through to an end that's in sight, and when we get there, the story is done. And then he's going to just create essentially new campaigns, like new stories that we can just listen in on, which is intriguing.
Yeah. And I mean, that brings in, we were talking about, oh gosh, was that last episode? Video games as a new genre. And this seems so similar, right? Yeah. It's like you're playing one character's sort of story in a video game. But Patrick Rothfuss has done an amazing job of making the four corners of civilization, or what's the word? Tamarant?
Yeah, Tamarant.
Making it such a livable world. I mean, it's an open world RPG game, but in book form.
It so is, yeah.
And it all makes sense. He's really thought through, kind of like Tolkien. He's thought through, like, how do these languages, how do the, like, forms of money, how do the different cultural norms fit together within this world?
Yeah, and it's
well done.
Very diverse. Not in our traditional ways, but in like a fantasy way. It's very diverse in a way that Tolkien was too. Like it brings together these different like races of people, which don't exist in the real world, but only in his fantasy land of Tamarant. It's not very diverse with a ton of other ways. There are some female characters. They don't pass the Bechdel test, but they do exist to be the object of affections. But that's not to say they're not powerful characters on their own, but, like, they are the objects of affection.
Is that... So are you good to move into, like, actually talking about...
Yes.
Okay. So is that one of the things, if anything, that you didn't like about it?
Yes.
Very
so there are a couple of female characters. I can't even remember the girl from University. There's, like, a couple girls... Oh, besides... What's that side book novella... Ari.
Oh, Slow Regard of Silent Things?
So Ari is a female character. She doesn't count because she's in this situation, because she is very special and she is the object of no one's affection in a sexual manner. She is just, you become attached to her for other reasons because she's strange and beautiful. But there is like she's like a Luna Lovegood. Yes, she is.
Except even more so.
Yes,
right?
very.
I love her. She's one of my favorite characters.
She's very deep in the Luna scale. I agree. She's one of my favorite characters too. But there's like this girl that's like aloof, and her name is Denna. And she changes her name a lot, and Quoth is of course mesmerized by her, as is everyone is mesmerized by her, because she's kind of like a free spirit, like essentially like she's some version of like an idolized gypsy. Like she's making her own way. She don't need no man. She don't need no people. She don't need no family. She is her own people. She's fascinating, but she's kind of just that, like, pretty girl that everyone wants to fuck also, you know?
A lot of, so I have to come out and out myself as someone who I loved Dinah.
I love her too is the problem. And that's just the world of fantasy. You're going to have to love things that are not the versions of shit you want.
I mean, the thing is, she's definitely, the thing is though, okay, take 2 steps back, Nick Parker, and then 1 step forward. Okay, so first of all, Quoth as an unreliable narrator, a lot of people are like, every woman in this world's in love with him. And my thought is, well, yeah, girl, he's telling his own story.
Yeah.
And in his telling, all the girls are stunningly beautiful, and every single one loves him.
That's so true. I actually hadn't super thought about that.
I mean, I'm not saying, I mean,
they do, like though. All the girls at school, he's like, I don't know, and then they wanted my dick, and I was like, no, thank you.
They do. And later in the series, no spoilers, he may or may not meet some fantasy characters out in the world, and they also love him. Like, everyone loves him. He is very much like the male version of a Mary Sue is, some people call it a Marty Stew. It's like a male character, or in the case of a Mary Sue, a female character, who is just good at everything.
Yeah.
Just a good person.
He is, though.
Everything's
easy for him.
Is
everything.
Well, yes. He's talented, he's skilled, and he's brilliant. But he's also kind of an idiot. Frankly, throughout the whole series, the way that he tries to show his love for Dinah doesn't work a lot of the time. He's clumsy.
He never used his words. He never thought to use his words.
And frankly, a lot of people are like, girl, Quoth done stalked Dinah.
He did
various times. And that is true,
yeah.
Queen. That is true. He's a little stalkery. He's obsessed with her.
He is.
If you're looking for faults in his character, my hand is raised. That's a fault. And it's not even like, I've seen some people on YouTube were like, this book's horrible. This Quoth character, he's good at everything. And also, did anyone notice when he stalked his love interest? And I was like, girl, do you not see that as a fault? Is it not possible if that was a conscious fault that Rothfuss wrote into the character?
And I think it was.
I think it was too, because I think Quoth is supposed to be, when you're young, you're brilliant, you're energetic, you're willing to tackle anything, but you're not wise. You don't get it. You might not have the emotional intelligence.
You don't get wise until the wise man's fear.
Exactly. And then
a wise man knows.
Girl, when we get to that, there's a quote from Wise Man's Fear that I will be reading.
Oh, I'm excited.
This next episode. Yes, I love it. It's the things the wise man's afraid of. But anyway, I think that's a big fault in his character. I don't understand why people don't see that as character building as opposed to, oh, this is horrible bullshit. Because I've seen some people be like, I am not gonna, what's the word where you don't support something and you won't buy it and you tell people not to buy it?
Protest?
Kind of, yeah. I'm gonna protest this book and I'm not gonna let anyone buy it because that Quoth is very stalkery and oh my gosh, what a like white male fucking stereotype.
Yeah,
but I think that's all on purpose.
Yeah. Well, and as a person who loves the story, to me that's an extreme like stance on it.
Yeah, me too.
Especially again in fantasy novels, there's a lot of problem factors peppered in, but like you said, I also think it really adds a lot of dimension either to the relationships they form at a later time and or just the character arc on a whole, because Harry Potter has a lot of that because he is like, he does things come so easy to him. He gets like whatever, but also he's like an idiot and he's like not the best with like interpersonal relationships outside of his inner circle and like he doesn't understand social cues and like he's a dick to like people for no good reason.
Yeah. Often.
Yeah. And you know what? That's just how it is.
Yeah, exactly.
You love them in spite of it.
And also, you know, anytime someone says this about a character, especially a protagonist in a series or a book, I'm like, girl, for a book to be notable, it has to be about a special person. Maybe Quoth is especially brilliant and talented. That's what makes him fucking legendary, you silly motherfucker. They don't write a trilogy of books about Stu Brownsfield, who has a milking cow and masturbates morning and night. No, girl! That's your next door neighbor. You don't need a book about her.
But he's cooking something good.
Let me tell you though, well, he might be cooking. Yeah, my apartment does smell good right now. Somebody's making a roast beef or something. It smells good as hell. But let me tell you though, if I was to write a book about boring-ass Stu Brownsfield, people would say, why is this even a book?
Mm-hmm.
He's not interesting. And I'd say, but these motherfuckers told me that a protagonist needs to be more relatable and needs to be less good at things. I just deeply disagree with people who say that the protagonist of this series is too perfect. He's incredibly imperfect. I think it's their bias because they see a straight man acting like a shitty straight man. They say, oh, this is just bias. Sometimes that's a conscious decision. And I think in this case, it was.
Hey.
But some people don't like Dinah, too, and that pisses me off. They find her just unlikable. And I think that's misogyny, which maybe is a double standard, but whatever.
I don't find her just, like, unlikable on principle. I find her, like, plucky and refreshing and, like... I don't know.
Like, sexy. To
she
me,
is
she's
sexy.
Very, like,
she is
she's
very
so
sexy.
Confident
and she embraces
bad.
it, and she uses her sex.
She's so
not
bad.
like she's not just like out there like fucking everybody, but she is like, this is a power that I wield, and I will be using it, and you will be buying me dinner,
and I will not apologize.
Yeah.
And why should
for
I?
anything.
I'm fucking Dinah.
Yeah.
Did you not know? Probably you didn't because she went by another name.
She changes it
Next
frequently.
city over, yeah. She's kind of like the Catwoman of this world. Too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, she's such a Selena Kyle.
Oh, she is. Because sometimes you're like, girl, you good? Girl, you bad? Girl, what you doing right now? What you trying to steal? Dinner.
Yeah.
I see you gypsy ass motherfucker, Esmeralda.
Yeah. There's another character that's a female character that, like, she has a kind of dicey backstory. She got, like, kicked out of uni, and, like, you're not really sure, like, what her deal is. Like, can you trust her? Can you not trust her? Yeah. And she's... I can't remember her name, so this is not a great anecdote at all.
Well, it's also good for us to avoid spoilers.
Yeah. I don't want to tell you too much, but but she's there.
She's a business lady. Let's call her a business
She's
lady.
a businesswoman.
Yeah.
I enjoy all of the scenes with her because she's also independent woman that is very in charge and unpredictable. Like, you don't know what to expect when you interact with her, which I think is kind of cool. Because, like... It's hard out there for a woman trying to make it on her own, especially in, like, this world of Tamarath. Like, it's almost like you have to network and know people and, like, be a man to get ahead.
She's a bit of a Selena Kyle in her own way. I mean, a woman making her way in, like, an underground black market kind of life.
Yeah.
Say, right? I think that's pretty vague.
That's
not a spoiler. Yeah, she's one of my favorite characters. I like, too, that she's also sexy. Just like Dinah. In fact, all of the characters, all the female characters, and many of the male characters in this series are sexy. There aren't very many sexless people, which I really do appreciate. There are two queer characters. I'm not going to ruin it and say who they are, but they're a couple. So they're not, like, out there fucking people, but they also are not sexless, which often queer characters are sexless, especially in fantasy. So it's nice to see some, like, normal-ass gays living their lives. Was there anything else you didn't like about it, Morgie?
I mean, not particularly off the top of my head. I was, like, all in pretty much from start to finish. Like, yes. I was loving every moment of it.
Rothfuss is a legit poet.
Yeah.
His writing is as beautiful as any writing I've ever seen in a fantasy book, which I know is like, that's a big mouthful. But I was so, because you know that I always look for that. That's why I can't get into things like Dan Brown, right? Because I'm like, girl, where's the poetry though? Where's the beauty of it? I think that Patrick Rothfuss writes a beautiful story.
He's very talented.
It's stunning.
Yeah.
And there are lots of songs
and
poems.
It's very Tolkien-esque in a lot of ways, especially with the songs, the backstories, and kind of the element of, like, secondhand storytelling. I feel like there's a whole lot of that wrapped up in there.
I think it's so smart. Very meta.
Yeah.
Very meta kind of. So another thing that I love that we were talking about before is the magic system in this world. So Morgie, now I'm putting you on the spot. I did not prep Morgie for this. I want you to think before you judge her if you could do this, if given this, okay?
Okay.
Morgie, there are 8 different kinds of magic within this world. How many can you name? Think about maybe his time at university.
Can you tell me, like, one as an example?
Oh, sure. I think probably the most obvious one is naming. That's a kind of magic. You learn the name of something, then you can control it.
Oh, it's so stupid because, like, I can't remember, like, what they call the things. But what if I describe to you a thing and you can tell me what it's called?
I think that's...
So there was, there was basically, like, a metalworking one where you, like, infuse power into, like, objects.
Yeah, so it's... you use runes and you do this really impressive like metalwork shit. Yeah. It's called sigildry.
Sigildry, yes. And so you make like a bow and arrow that like can shoot a straight arrow a million miles away or something because you've like empowered it.
And it's really cool. This is one of the, along with we'll go back to naming, but it's one of the learned skills. So, like, you can go to university and learn that. Mm-hmm. I hope I'm saying that right. It sounds weird.
That's how I think it's said. Yeah.
So, like, you would put, like, a little rune on, like, the haft of the bow, and you would make it with a certain metal. So, it's
and
half
you would
magic,
sell it for money to just, like, customers.
It's like craftsmanship.
Yeah.
But you also might make, like, a lamp that can light up without a battery, or you might make, like, Lord knows, boots that never wear down. Stuff like that.
And like materials to build those things are precious. Yes. So some things are like very valuable, like armor that you can't pierce or something. Yes. It's like really complicated magic that goes into it. So like everybody can't produce it. So that also makes it like more valuable. So that was like, so I enjoyed sigildry.
Sigildry's awesome.
There was like a medical magic situation.
Technically, that's just medical knowledge.
That's just like being good with herbs and stuff.
I think
there's like a potions aspect.
Because he goes deep into that as well in his world building. And like, he fleshes that out. But technically, that's just pure science.
Oh, what else is there? Drinking, mixing.
Alchemy.
Yeah.
Which is, that's another learned one. That is kind of like, where's the line between like magic and science? Like the medicine goes into alchemy, which is kind of a little bit more magical. But
I have one on the tip of my tongue. It's the one the professor that hates him teaches that, and it's like, it's.
I've never been a broke down woman, so I don't have empathy for your situation, but I do have sympathy.
Yeah, sympathy magic. Yes. And it's basically like binding. It's like tying things together.
Yeah. It's very very similar in some ways to Brandon Sanderson's allomancy.
The elemental stuff is very similar.
Is that allomancy? Is that what
it's called? Yeah. With the metals.
So you like drink a metal and then you can like do a certain thing or whatever. It's like this idea that like your will, so this is very magical, but still a learned skill at university. Your will allows you to connect to things and therefore kind of affect the laws of physics, right? So you have a hair from someone's head. It's therefore quite a lot easier to say cause them pain because you have a part of them, right?
Yeah. And like having someone's blood is like intense. Like you don't give your blood to other people.
No, because then they have power over your physical being.
Yeah, they could like literally just boil your blood and kill you.
And you're dead, right? And so sympathy is fascinating. It's the first one he learns.
It's like the thing he learns before he knows that there's even such a thing. Yeah.
So that's really cool.
Sympathy.
I love sympathy.
Yeah.
So we've done alchemy, sympathy, sigildry, naming. Naming is kind of a weird one because it's technically learned. Like you could say major in naming magic, but it's almost kind of like art. It's like
you have to have skill. Yeah.
Exactly. There's talent involved, but then you can like hone the talent. And naming is just like, if you understand the true nature of a thing, you can control it.
Like fire.
Yes, or wind. The name of the wind. Right?
What was the girl... never mind. Whatever. There's classmates who practice naming other things. But apparently there's like a tier of like the difficulty of naming things, and the wind is the most difficult to name.
Whereas just to name a bitch, anybody can do that. You a bitch?
I majored in that.
Yeah. I double majored in that and self-hate, which is a branch off. Sometimes I stand in a mirror and I say, "You a bitch."
You're so accomplished.
I know. I'm really
he's a studious person.
So now there are two more Gee.
I cannot. It's been a hot minute.
I feel you, no judgment. There are two that are not learned magics, because Rothfuss does this cool thing where he gives you a learned kind of magic, where he can go into the details and explain almost like the mathematical formulas behind it. Sigildry, for sure.
Yeah.
It's so, like, it's almost mathematical, honestly.
Indeed.
But there are also some, like, woo-woo magics in his world.
I love woo-woo magic.
I love woo-woo magic. It's my favorite kind of magic.
Yeah.
I don't need to know why the magic works. That's just not necessary for me, really, but whatever.
It just does.
Different people want different things. But the fae, or the fairy race in this world, practice gramarye and also glamour, which are two types of fairy magic.
Okay.
Gramarye is the art of making things be. So it's, for example, if someone in the series was to make a fancy cape out of shadows for someone else, that practice of making something new out of other things, but doing it with magic, so it's got this weird amorphous, ephemeral nature, is gramarye.
Okay.
Or at one point, I think Bast, who's like who's close little sidekick buddy, he like breaks a table and then picks it up, and then from the ink on the table, he makes a blackbird, and then the blackbird flies, and he grabs the blackbird and breaks the blackbird in half, and then the blood becomes sparks. You know, it's like that, where like one thing becomes another. It's like, what is it that Professor McGonagall teaches?
Transfiguration.
It's like transfiguration. That's what it seems like to me. Whereas they also do glamour, which is the art of making things seem. Where, for example, like in The Craft, where they turn their hair colors and stuff, it's like that, where it's like, okay, you have blue eyes, but I'm going to make them black.
And Brandon Sanderson does that in the, what's that series called? The Stormlight Archive?
Oh, yeah.
So, like, that's, like, they have a magic that is that.
Yes, Miss Shaylin.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's her whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's... I mean, it's not like, oh, that's such a common thing, but it is, like, cool to see it played out in, like, similar but different ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you may have noticed, we've mentioned 6. These are all the ones we know, even with research. There are 2 more.
You think it's going to hit us up in the next one?
We know for sure.
Yeah.
He said there are 8 kinds of magic. He's only explained 6. So this last book, and once again, expectations, girl. We need to know 2 more kinds of magic, and they need to be different from all these. But I honestly think the next step is going to be blending something. Maybe blending fae magic and human magic somehow. And that's going to be the last 2. Or...
Yeah, because there is, like, all this folklore around the fae realm and, like, everything that they, like, it as a realm and an existence plays a huge role in the lives of, like, the characters, so that would make sense.
Or maybe something to do with death. Because as you were saying, medicine's been a huge part, but it's been just science so far. I mean, after all, magic and rebirth are tied together, so maybe there's something there. And maybe that goes on to explain why we meet Ocote instead of Quoth at the beginning of Name of the Wind.
Yeah. Changing his identity.
Queen Bee, speaking of meeting people, if you were to put old Quoth in a Harry Potter house, I'm bringing back a classic from your repertoire. What do you think?
Well, honestly, I think he's written to be a Gryffindor.
I agree.
I think he's written
Full
that
of
way.
himself,
Yeah.
super confident, good at lots of things, very privileged.
Brave, blindly. Like, he's like, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to get in hella trouble and I'm going to do it anyway.
Loud. Gryffindors are so goddamn loud.
Loyal. He has a small group of friends that he's very loyal to. Yeah.
Okay, I agree with that. Okay. What about old Denna? Who do you think she is? She's a tough one, I think. That old
It's
love
hard.
interest.
Honestly, I think it's a great and interesting combination that you don't see as often, but I think she's a super Slitherclaw.
Yes, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
She's definitely not no Hufflepuff.
Oh,
at least as far as we've seen.
She ain't nice.
And she's not courageous in the way Gryffindors are courageous.
She's selfish.
Yeah, she is. She's got... We don't really know, actually. But
she's looking out for number one.
And she's working towards it.
Yeah.
Okay. What about old Bass? That would be, quote, good old sidekick.
Yeah.
Sexy as hell. Powerful. More powerful than we know, I think, actually.
I think so, too. And I will say, without spoiling too much of, like, what his trajectory could possibly be, Bast often seems like a Hufflepuff to me.
He seems very loyal.
Yes.
100% loyal. I don't know. He might be, and this is a really oxymoronical combination, but he might be a Hufflitheran.
I agree with that, because the other thing that I might put him in a Slytherin, because it's like he has like a front. He has this like persona, and to me that's Hufflepuff, but I feel like there's a lot going on underneath, and he's very calculating.
Yeah, so Slitherpuff. That's what he is. He's a Slitherpuff.
Absolutely.
Well, the Chronicler, we haven't talked a lot about in this episode, but I mean, he's a main character. He has lots and lots to do. Who do you think he would be?
I think he's a Ravenclaw.
He's a Ravenclaw?
Because I feel like the nature of his whole existence as a chronicler, like his whole thing is to collect information and put stories together and like create narratives full of truth. Like he's only interested in the truth. And to me, I just feel like that's like he would be comfortable in Ravenclaw House.
Okay, interesting.
He deals in certainty.
I think so too. Yes, he wants knowledge, right? Which is a problem throughout the series. He's like, did it really happen that way, God? Yeah. And Quoth's like, yes,
Quoth makes it hard for him to do his job.
He does. Yes, he does. So with that in mind, I've got a marry the wind, fuck the wind, kill the wind. Okay. Here's your first one. Marry, fuck, kill. Sanderson. Gaiman. Rothfuss. Brandon Sanderson, Neil Gaiman, Patrick Rothfuss. Which one will survive Morgan's vagina?
Okay, well, it'd be really difficult for me to have a long-lasting relationship with Brandon Sanderson just based on the level of faith that he possesses. And I don't want to say that, like, because a person is of a certain faith that they don't want me to be a part of their lives. Like, I'm not saying, like, he would not want me there. I'm just saying I would find it hard for us to reconcile our opinions on different things.
Yes.
So I would have to kill him in this scenario.
I cannot believe you. Poor Brandon Sanderson. He's the sweetest little Mormon writer you ever met in your life. You just killed him right in his underthings.
I'm just saying to look out for our best interests, and then if we were to fuck, he would feel guilty about it because it's not super a part of like who he is as a person.
That's true.
And I wouldn't want him to live with the guilt of that.
I understand.
And we wouldn't.
It's kind of you.
We like literally couldn't get married.
It's a mercy killing, really.
Yeah, I do it for
because you would make him miserable.
I would make him miserable, and also, if he had sex with me, he'd never be able to go back.
Ooh. That's that addicted pussy right there.
So I do it for him and I do it for the gram, but it's done. And then as far as like fucking people go, I'm not particularly attracted to Patrick Rothfuss. I'm not unattracted to him. Like it's not like ew, but I'm also not like lining up to like just have sex with him because he's famous.
I mean, let's just be straight. Patrick Rothfuss is just George R.R. Martin 20 years ago.
But I'd fuck him.
You give him a good fuck?
Yeah,
so is
why
he
not?
your fuck?
Yeah, I'll fuck him.
Oh.
But also because, like, the thought of, like, marrying and being with Neil Gaiman forever is so eccentric. It's so eccentric that could be, like, forever a person that I spend my life with. I feel like that would be a really not boring thing to do.
Yes.
So I'm there for that.
Yes. You know what? I agree. I would kill Rothfuss and I would fuck Brandon Sanderson.
Respectable.
Only because I feel like Brandon Sanderson, because of the level of guilt involved in that fuck, it would be good sex. Yeah. You know, that like nasty,
you have to make it count. Yeah.
Angry sex. Yes. But I would definitely marry Neil Gaiman too. So good choice there. Okay. Marry the wind, fuck the wind, kill the wind. Quoth, Bast, Dinah.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, Bast is like a fairy, so that would be interesting.
Mm-hmm. He sounds sexy as fuck, girl. Don't front. That motherfucker sounds so hot. Plus, he can do a glamour
okay.
Anybody.
So
don't fuck it up now, Morgan.
Well, it's really tough because, like, I have an idea of what Quoth's life ended up being like, and do I want to, like, be, like, the barmaid? But at the same time, Denna's, like, really unpredictable. And do I want... Like, I, as a person, me, who I am, need some sort of... Not like I'm boring, but, like, some sort of predictability and structure. I need structure, and Denna cannot provide this for me. Okay. What if I kill Quoth? R.I.P. Unfortunate. Sorry.
Well, what are you going to do?
Finish telling your stories so we can learn it, but then see you later. But then you're done. And then I fuck Denna because, like, I want to be a part of it, but, like, I need that structure. And then I marry Bast because he's also a fairy person. So, like, I could, like, holiday in the fairy realm?
Girl.
I think I've made the right choice.
Girl, I agree with you. I definitely about Bast. Bast is the Neil Gaiman of this group.
Yeah.
Or Neil Gaiman is the Bast of that group, maybe we should say. He's magical. He's perfect. He may or may not be royalty.
Ambiguous. Yeah.
And he's sexy as fuck. And he can do a glamour on you and a glamour on himself. You can be Brad and Angelina. Or if you prefer, you can be Brad and...
Brad.
Brad and Brad!
Yay!
I was going to say Brad and Jennifer Aniston. But yeah,
yeah, if you're Team Jen.
Yeah, whatever. And you might be boring and be Team Jen, and that's fine. And I would kill Denna, even though I think she'd be a great fuck, and I love her as a character. But one of the main reasons that I love this series is I think Quoth is sexy as fuck. I mean,
he's got that swagger.
Every time they describe him, I'm like, yeah.
I feel that. Yeah, that's a tough call between them.
It is difficult.
You would definitely never want to marry either of them.
No. Yeah. They deserve each other as far as that
They
goes.
deserve it.
They really do. They're each other's curse. Girl.
Wow. I love a good marry, fuck, kill. I feel like people don't talk about that enough. And I feel like it really says a lot about who you are when you make your choices.
Yes. Oh, it says a lot about you. We should change the title of this podcast to Marry and Fuck Mick, Kill Morgan.
We could have a spin-off podcast where we only do marry, fuck, kills, and our episodes are like 60 seconds long.
That's actually not a bad idea. Maybe we should do it on Instagram or something. Like on the gram. Like a series of like marry, fuck, kills.
It could
Just like
work.
in the moment. Like marry, fuck, kill. Trees, bushes, grasses, go.
Marry, fuck, kill Monday. MFK, hashtag MFK Monday.
Look at us. We're changing the world.
You're going to tell your friends, you heard it first, you learned it from us.
Right here, baby.
I'm literally going to institute this. Marry, fuck, kill Mondays.
I love it. I can't.
Girl, I'm going to get on Canva. I'm going to make some little things.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to do a little something, something?
Mm-hmm.
Look, and y'all heard it right here on this episode.
We did it for you. Okay, I have one more little thing that I think is really cool that I wanted to tell you that Patrick Rothfuss revealed throughout some interviews he was doing. He referred to the name of the King Killer Chronicles as a prologue.
Shut up. The whole thing a prologue?
The whole thing is just
trying to
prologue.
He's trying to pull a... What's the name of that man we done did an episode on recently? Shananara Chronicles?
Oh, Terry Brooks.
He's trying to pull a Terry Brooks right now. Spend his whole life writing in one world. I'm not mad.
I'm not saying he won't do that, but I am saying it took him 10 years from completed book to we still don't have a book on our hands. So he might want to speed that process up if that's his plan. But he said, like, he was like, everyone's going to hate this, but, like, he thinks of it as a prologue. The whole thing. And I think what he means...
I'm excited about
yeah. And I think what he means by that is just that, like we've already said, when Quoth's story is done, it's just a piece of the puzzle and there's so much more to the world. Because it is like an intense world full of all kinds of things.
And that seems very real. I mean, it's such a deep, interesting world. Wow, I had not read that.
Mm-hmm. I think that's exciting. But I guess we'll just have to like stick around and see where he goes with this. Because there's also like all these possibilities of like what could he possibly do with future books or storylines in the world of Tamaran. Because in the Wise Man Sphere, we dive into, like, other areas of the Four Corners, like the Adima Ray and some other stuff. So, like, there's all these, like, individual stories or, like, people we could follow.
There is, I mean, we've done a really great job. I hope everyone knows what a great job we did avoiding spoilers.
We tried.
I'm really proud of us. There are some characters that I could see possibly continuing on into new series, but maybe I'll save that for the next episode.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we have a lot more to talk about in kind of part 2 of the King Killer Chronicles. But let's not leave without mentioning, this is not a spoiler, because if you Google anything, girl, what the fuck does this series mean? The King Killer Chronicles. Like, that is so ambiguous and unanswered, and we are thousands of pages deep into this series.
Which king?
Be more specific.
Who killed her?
Why they gotta die?
Did she deserve to go?
Did they get to have a snack first?
Was she a fancy king or like a beggar king?
Is it like that ambiguous where it's like the feminine king and it's actually a queen?
Oh, it could be. Does she wear pointy shoes like the Pope?
Is she a fairy?
I have lots of questions.
It's very ambiguous and people are upset, mostly just us. So.
And did he really kill a king or did he just depose a king? Or was he king and he killed himself? Did he fake his own death? Literally, it could be anything. And I'll tell y'all, it's not a spoiler because we don't fucking know.
We have no idea.
At the end of book 2, you're still unsure.
You have no clue.
So, girl, I could try to spoil it all day long, but I cannot.
So, we mad. We out here mad. Trying to figure it
Shannara?
out. Tell us!
Who the fuck is Shannara?
I was so upset.
I went to the post office.
I Googled.
I went to the DMV. I asked Jeeves.
A quick Google
Shannara?
did not answer this question for me. I Googled who was Shannara. It said, you might be interested in Shannara Chronicles on MTV. I said, I am interested. I watched it. It did not answer that
and I'm still
for me.
I said to myself, no. But who is Shannara?
Oh, so maybe in part 2 of this podcast, you'll find out who Shannara is, what kings have been killed, what chronicles will tell, and other great information. I hope that you guys are into The Name of the Wind. And if you're not, so I hope that this podcast has inspired you to be.
Y'all, seriously, we talk about so much good and maybe some iffy
But this
content.
is up there.
This is in the top 3.
Yeah.
Of anything it is, and it's coming out right now. It is modern. If you are a fan of fantasy, you have got to read it. You don't even have to like it. I'm never telling you to like it, girl. But you need to read it and have an opinion on it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And it's notable.
Okay, and I would like to plug this week reading things and then forming an opinion and not just blindly hating things because you think you should.
I love that.
Shout out callback to people who don't like Jane Austen on principle and have never actually picked up Pride and Prejudice. Because if you picked it up and it's not for you, great. Because I feel the same way about Dune. Picked it up, not for me. It's a classic, other people love it.
Picked it up, put it down, honey.
Girl.
Picked it up, put it down.
So just try some shit. Because, like, maybe if you're, like, not sure if fantasy is your genre, we've got some recs for you. And we really think that you should just give some good fantasy a try.
Yeah, we'll give you some recs that'll wreck you, bitch.
Girl, like The Name of the Wind.
You better gird the loins.
Gird your
You
loins!
be sobbing like a motherfucker.
I made him. I got to pick the movie the other night, like 2 weeks ago, and we watched The Devil Wears Prada, and he fucking loved it.
That's a good movie.
It's just a good movie.
I'm on this diet where I don't eat, and then just when I feel like I'm going to pass out, I eat a cube of cheese.
Yeah, and look how skinny you are.
It works. Skinny Legend 2018.
Emily Blunt was so skinny.
Yeah, too skinny, I think.
Yeah, well,
I mean, that's what happens when you don't eat, and then you eat a cube of cheese.
Well, there you go.
But it's true that a cube of cheese is very satisfying if you're very hungry.
And I am, so let's wrap this up.
Let's do it. Okay, where can they find us?
Girl, we out there on the internet. You can find us on social media at BNBcast or at Beauty and the Bitch. Girl, we even have a website.
No, shut your mouth.
It's like bnbcast.wordpress.com.
Oh, you go there?
Yes, girl. You can find us on the YouTube.
Is it poppin'?
It is crunk up in there.
Every week, once or twice a week, we're going to have Let's Queer Witcher 3.
Yep.
In addition to that, we have every single episode of the podcast.
Except for one.
So if you want to check us out there, that's a good place to do it, girl.
Yeah, search us out. Beauty and the Bitch. It's hype. It's lit. We got something for everybody. You can follow me personally on the gram at Morganized Mess or at my website, morganizedmess.com.
And you can follow me on the 803 as I make my way to work. But let me tell you, do not talk to me. Do not look at me. Do not sneeze. Don't listen to music loudly. Please don't do anything like pick your teeth, your nose, your ears, or clean your nails on the bus, because I will hate you forever.
Yeah, so find him there. And find us back here next week, I think, for part 2, where we are following up with the Wise Man Sphere. Until then, babes.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
I want to say something funny.
Do you remember when we used to do that voice where we were like, how could you do this to us?
How could you do? That was you. That's all you, Queen. I was just trying to be you.
I think she's a character in this book.
How could you do this, sympathy?
Oh, it's painful.
Do you have a home? Beauty in the Bed. You look. Beauty in the Bed. Beauty in the Bed.